Greetings, revolutionary greetings as everybody started coming to the live. As always, please share this live as soon as you come into the live. Nwachinike, greetings. Greetings, brother. Greetings, brother. As y'all come in this live, please share this live for me. It's an important topic, an important commemoration that we're about to discuss real quick. You feel me? So as you come into this live, please share this live. We're going to be talking about a historical moment in the history of African women globally and new African women here in North America, United States of America. We're going to be talking about this great sister, freedom fighter. Not only her, but the importance of all African women globally who have fought for our people globally and, locally here in the hills of North America for the new African nation and new African people and African people, period. So this is going to be a commemoration of this important date that's coming up this weekend. I thought I'd hop on because I know a lot of people don't really be on Facebook during the weekend. So I wanted to go ahead and commemorate the sister on this day. Many of my African brothers and sisters, I know they probably heard of her. They might not have really heard of her. For the ones who haven't heard of her, from, Biafra land, all across the globe who may not ever heard of Sister Assata Shakur. So that's why I'm doing this video to commemorate her 40th anniversary of her being liberated from behind enemy lines in prison. So I just want to get y'all a little familiar with her, my brothers and sisters that live outside of the United States of America, and even the brothers and sisters who live in North America who may not know of Assata Shakur. This is what we're going to do with this video and this live today is commemorate her liberation and how important her liberation was and still is today to our people here in North America and the United States and to our African people globally, because she's a descendant of African people, African freedom fighters, African queens, African sisters throughout the history that have fought for the total liberation of African people against European colonialism, European imperialism and capitalism and all those things that we continue to struggle against here today across the globe. So, and the most important thing that I always want to make so people can understand is that what I represent and what everybody should represent as freedom fighters and freedom-loving African people is that this is a global family. This is not just about our people here in the United States of America. It's about all our people. You feel me? No matter where they live on this planet. This is what this is about. You feel me? It's about all our African people and all our African struggles globally. Peace, sister. Thanks for tuning in. Power to you, beautiful. This is for all African people, man. What Assata Shakur represents, what her liberation, her struggle, her sacrifices represents all African people, and particularly our African sisters, our African queens who have stood up against European oppression, European imperialism throughout history to fight to free our people no matter where they live on this globe. So let me just set this up real quick as I get into it. And also, in commemoration to Assata's 40th liberation that took place November 2nd, 1979. So, if you don't know that date, please write that date down, brothers and sisters. November 2nd, 1979. Annually is something that we, as new African people have turned into an annual Assata Shakur Day, November 2nd. It's coming up this weekend. Things that you can do to honor her liberation and to commemorate her liberation is to teach, you know, your kids, your family members, you know, or just teach African people that may not know about this sister. You see what I'm saying? That needs to know about this sister and great auntie of the Black Liberation Movement. You feel me? Spread her name and, you know, spread her name and you know, in the compassion of love, revolutionary spirit and freedom and sovereignty for all our people, man. So, you know, I really wanted to do this, man, because y'all know I'm an advocate for political prisoners, and being an advocate of political prisoners, our key and most important thing is to not let our freedom fighters be forgotten, to always uplift their names and keep their names prevalent to today. So these brothers and sisters, no matter where they live in the world, if they live in political exile, we must let them know that they're not forgotten and that we love them and we're still struggling for them and we're continuing to struggle and we're fighting for them. You feel me? So, you know, anything that you do righteous in the name and the spirit of revolutionary, you know, love. You see what I'm saying? Because this is what it's about. It's about revolutionary love. And I know a lot of Black people are afraid of that word revolution and revolutionaries. It's nothing to be afraid of, because if you know what that means, you see what I'm saying? If you know what that means, you shouldn't fear it. Change is something that we all should embrace. We should all love. We are in a constant struggle and battle to change this global system of white supremacy, white imperialism, European imperialism. It's a daily struggle for African people, brown people, and all oppressed people to continue to push the fight and the struggle to change what you know is not right in this world, which is revolution. Revolution is nothing to fear, people. You see what I'm saying? And the most important people we must uplift and embrace in revolutionary struggle and revolutionary science and spirit and love is our women. Our woman is the most loving a Black woman, uplifting a Black woman, commemorating a Black woman, African woman, is the most revolutionary thing that any new African Black man can do in his lifetime, is loving a Black woman, teaching about Black women's struggles, because you must understand that all across this globe, and specifically for new African people in the United States of America, the most oppressed of us all is the African woman, the Black woman. But on top of that, because we're not gonna hold her and keep her down in that negative energy space of being the most oppressed in America, she's also our number one most commendable and honorable and most revolutionary of all our people here in North America. Their struggle has been the most righteous here in North America. Why? Because the Black woman, the new African woman, is the one who has always fought for the Black man. You see what I'm saying? Always fought for us and still fight for us, because these type of sisters still exist. I know a lot of brothers and sisters that live outside of America, and you even got, you know, Africans and Black people who migrated here who think African Black women don't like Black men. I'm here to tell you that's not true, because you have to do the struggle and the history of new African Black people here in North America to understand what the sacrifices and the the resistance that African women have always continued to fight for Black men in the African nation, the new African nation here in North America, and Black people, period, has always been the Black woman. You see what I'm saying? We must make that understood. You see what I'm saying? Because a lot of things get lost in the sauce. A lot of patriarchy and a lot of male chauvinism and a lot of, male testosterone, you know what I'm saying, has been popularized, you know what I'm saying, throughout our struggle here in North America. And I'm here to tell you that, that's not true. Some of our greatest freedom fighters are new African Black women. You feel me? Like Assata Shakur. You know what I'm saying? That's been on the front lines, who have gave their lives up, who have been to prison, who is living in political exile right now. You see what I'm saying? We even got sisters still living in political exile. Miss Charlotte O'Neal of the Black Panther Party, who's living with her husband, but you know, she can come back to the United States of America, but you know, she took the ultimate sacrifice to stay with her husband in Africa. You know what I'm saying? So shout out to Charlotte O'Neal. If you don't know who she is, you should research her also. One of our great freedom fighters, Black Panther sister, Charlotte O'Neal. Yeah, man, this video was about Assata Shakur. In order to understand the liberation of Assata Shakur from prison 40 years ago, this year, is to understand the struggle of African women, period. And what particular woman am I talking about? You see what I'm saying? When I'm saying this continuation of this struggle of African women. Man, let me tell you something, man. To me, and this is my honest opinion, I know a lot of Black African brothers can also, co-sign this, is the fact that, man, there's nothing like a revolutionary woman, man. There's nothing like a revolutionary African woman. There's nothing like a politically educated, culturally educated, freedom-fighting Black woman. Period, man. It's nothing like it. Nothing like it, man. You see what I'm saying? So this is, piggybacking off of that is that we must understand that it's a history and a struggle of African freedom-fighting women and queens throughout history that created Assata Shakur. You see what I'm saying? What Assata Shakur descends from is great African freedom-fighting women that started on that continent over there, which is our ancestral land, our African throne. You see what I'm saying? Is Africa. It all started there. You see what I'm saying? With great freedom-fighting queens throughout history. You see what I'm saying? And what type of women am I talking? I'm talking about nationalist women. Women who are nationalists by nature. Because the thing we have to understand about African women and African freedom-fighting women in blood is that African people, period, we are nationalists by nature. You feel me? We're nationalists by nature. So it's even more powerful of a symbol and spiritually, politically, and socially, and economically to uplift a nationalist woman who's continued to struggle to free African people globally, man. It's nothing like a nationalist woman who understands that she's fighting for something bigger than just herself and just her people, you know what I'm saying? In totality, is they fighting for new African liberation, freedom, nationhood. You see what I'm saying? Assata Shakur is a symbol of that. You see what I'm saying? She continued on the tradition of that, of African freedom-fighting nationalist woman. You feel me? And throughout history, she descends off the tree of freedom-fighting queens like Amina, the Queen of Zaire, of Nigeria, who was a nationalist, freedom-fighting queen. Who else throughout history? The Candaces, the Candites of Nubia, Sudan, like Amani Shiketo, a nationalist queens who fought against Europeans and European imperialism in ancient times. Great queens like Ya Asatiwa, you see what I'm saying? Of West Africa, a great freedom-fighting queen. You see what I'm saying? That you should also uplift and commemorate. She comes off the tree of other freedom-fighting queens like Queen Nzinga of Ndongo. You know what I'm saying? A nationalist queen who rose up against European colonialism on the African continent. Nationalist queens like Queen Hatshepsut of Chikam, ancient Kemet, who was a nationalist queen who continued the struggle of nationalist queens throughout history. Who else? The great queen of Madagascar, who rose up against European colonialism and imperialism. Great queen, Rana Valona. If you don't know who that is, go research that great queen throughout history. Assata Shakur is a descendant of that great freedom-fighting queen. Queen Nandi of West Africa. Another great freedom-fighting queen throughout history, a nationalist queen. Taking it to the African diaspora. Great queens like Nanny of the Maroons, a nationalist queen. Harriet Tubman, whose movie comes out this Friday. And please, all y'all please go support that movie, man. They finally made a movie for Harriet Tubman, great new African freedom fighter, great new African nationalist, the general of the new African nation, man. Go support the movie of Harriet Tubman. Assata Shakur said Harriet Tubman was her greatest inspiration to become a freedom fighter. You see what I'm saying? So you definitely need to go support that movie, Harriet, this weekend. Who else? Go back to Africa real quick. West Africa, the great Assata is a great descendant of these great freedom fighting, the Amazons of Dahomey, the great freedom fighting tribe of Dahomey, the sisters of Dahomey, who was one of the greatest military, nationalist, freedom fighting women movements in history. Assata descends from these great freedom fighters, man. Back to the diaspora, the great freedom fighting sisters of Kitty, Polly, and Keturah of the Virgin Islands slave uprisings. She's a descendant of those great three freedom fighting nationalist queens, man. Brayfu, Brayfu of the Caribbean islands, another great freedom fighter, nationalist queen, that rose up against the capitalist system of slavery and European colonialism. She also descends from the great, let's go back to Africa. Let's go to Biafra land. The great freedom fighting sisters of the Igbo Aba women, of the great Aba revolution of Biafra land. The Igbo women who rose up against European British colonialism. Assata Shakur is a descendant of those great freedom fighter sisters. Dandara, the wife of Zumbi, of the Colombo revolution that took place in the Caribbean islands in South America. Assata is a descendant of that great sister who's not talked about. I just wanted to bring up all those great sisters because I want to just paint the picture of a great history, a great chronology of African freedom fighting sisters throughout history, man. You see what I'm saying? But, you know, a lot of our sisters are not talked about enough. You see what I'm saying? We know Assata Shakur is like one of the most popular of black women in this time period of history that came from the struggle of new African freedom fighters in the United States of America. But there are a lot of history that's being exposed now on great new African and African nationalist freedom fighting women that's coming out now that's been suppressed all the way through slavery. You see what I'm saying? We got slave freedom fighting women there. So let me just get on into Assata Shakur's liberation. The first thing we must understand about Assata Shakur is this. Assata Shakur is the daughter of North Carolina and New York. She traveled back and forth in her childhood through these two areas, New York and North Carolina. I want to make the emphasis on that because those two places are significant to her development of who she became as a freedom fighter. You feel me? And one of those great inspirations was her aunt. You see what I'm saying? Her aunt was a civil rights activist. You see what I'm saying? That she lived with in New York City. And Assata said in her autobiography, I do believe, or either it was on an interview that I saw of Assata, is that she said that her aunt, and this is going to show you the power of African sisters, man, black women, is that her aunt was her greatest inspiration to jump in the struggle. You see what I'm saying? She said her whole work, she said, matter of fact, she said her aunt's struggle and work in the civil rights movement was her heroin. You see what I'm saying? To force herself into the movement to fight for new African people in America was her aunt. You feel me? So this is what would later on thrust her into the movement of the Black liberation struggle. She would later on join the Black Panther Party of self-defense in New York City. She became significant in the Harlem Black Panther Party for self-defense. She did a lot of work there. She did a lot of work in the free breakfast program, which is also, y'all need to, also do your homework on, is that the free breakfast program that the United States of America stole and would later become, welfare assistance. You see what I'm saying? That they stole from the Black Panther Party. The free breakfast program is celebrating its 50-year anniversary this year. See, a lot of things have been going on, you know what I'm saying, for a long time. It's been commemorated this year. Yes, the free breakfast program. Go do your research on the free breakfast program, which turned 50 years this year. She did a lot of work in that area. She also did a lot of work in medical aid. She was a nurse in the Black Panther Party. You see what I'm saying? So I just wanted to throw those things out there so that we can understand that Assata Shakur was a political, she still is. I don't like to say she was. She still is. She might not be as active today, but she still is. She was a political activist. She did a lot of community work for our people. She sacrificed a lot since her teenage years and early 20s, man. She did a lot of community service for African Black people in New York City with the Black Panther Party. She actually did a lot of work with political education, which is the most important thing that we need to understand about Assata Shakur, is that she's how can I say, a loyalist to political education and understanding that Black sisters, African sisters, Black women, you need to be politically educated, not just men. See, this is the thing we got to understand when we dealing with patriarchy and patriarchal societies, man, like the Empire of the United States of America and across the world, is that a lot of Black sisters think they don't have to be in the struggle. They don't have to be politically educated like their male counterparts. I'm here to tell you, sisters, if you're not getting political education and teaching political education, I suggest you to do so, man. Because, like I'm saying, you're the power. You can't have no nation without the Black woman, man. The Black woman is the nation. Her womb is the nation. There's no nation without the African Black woman. This is facts. You see what I'm saying? She is the first teacher of our kids. You see what I'm saying? So now that when you're looking through our social dynamic and our social struggle in history, no matter where we live on the globe, but I'm talking about my people in America, is that if you don't have that African woman that's politically educated on her people's struggle, then her children will grow up to become, how can I put it, an abnormal, development if they're not being taught this information by the Black women. Because too many sisters in America don't have political education. You feel me? The most important thing, and not to make this too difficult, is the fact that political education is just strictly understanding your reality, man. That's all political education is, man. It's understanding the political, social, economic reality in the material world. That's all political education is. It's to develop an ideology and theory and a scientific, ideology to help you struggle against what you're struggling against in this society, in a racist society, a capitalist society. You feel me? That's all political education helps you understand things clearly on what you're facing daily. So this is why Assata Shakur she's a loyalist and a proponent of political education. Now, leading up, and that takes me to my next, what I want to discuss is that about Assata Shakur's legacy, is that one of the main things that made her leave the Black Panther Party is that she felt that the political education wasn't scientifically sound enough. You feel me? Because this is another component that we got to understand about political education, that it comes from a historic point also, which is what we call historic materialism. You feel me? So she felt that the history of African people was being left out in the Black Panther Party's political education program. So this is what she got into, many arguments and disputes with male chauvinism inside the Black Panther Party that made her finally decide she no longer wanted to be a part of the Black Panther Party, because they wasn't teaching enough African history, enough African nationalist history of the great Africans who were fighting, you see what I'm saying, for nationalism and sovereignty and nationhood, like Marcus Garvey, you know what I'm saying, and all the great African freedom fighters I mentioned earlier in this live. Is that she felt the Black Panther Party wasn't teaching enough African history, because she felt that we need to be rooted in African culture and African nationalism. You feel me? So this was her biggest dispute against the Black Panther Party. So she leaves the Black Panther Party in the early 70s. Which brings me to the point of a movement that you also should be teaching your kids about, that Assata Shakur helped create, which is the Black Liberation Army. All my African brothers and sisters on this live, if you never heard of the Black Liberation Army, aka the BLA, please write that name down and go Google it and go research it. The Black Liberation Army, which is a long historical history of freedom fighting for Black liberation and nationalism. This is what this organization, which we don't really like to really say they was an organization because it wasn't really structured like that. The Black Liberation Army, it was exactly and is what it says. It's an army, a clandestine army. So Assata Shakur became one of the major proponents and figures of the Black Liberation Army, which came into existence in the early 70s. And this Black Liberation Army lasted between 1970 and 1981. It was a lot of ex-Black Panthers, because after the Black Panther movement started to decline from attacks from the COINTELPRO and J. Edgar Hoover, a lot of those great freedom fighters had to go underground, what we call underground. The underground is basically simply like what you're going to see when you go see Harriet Tubman's movie this Friday coming out. The Underground Railroad. See, there's a lot of things in history that still are connected and still is a network and a system that's still around today. The underground. So a lot of Black Panthers, former Black Panthers, to keep from getting assassinated and killed by the reactionary forces from these, whether it's covert or incovert attacks on the Black Panther Party, many of those great freedom fighters had to go underground. Assata was one of those people who went underground. You see what I'm saying? With a lot of the other great freedom fighters from the Black Panther Party. So when they went underground, they structured and put together cadres and units of Black Liberation Army units. So, because at this point in time, the attacks on the Black community, the New African community, and the Black Panther Party got so deep and got so terroristic that these great brothers and sisters knew that they had to go on the offense. In the simplest way I can put it, is go on the offense. Because like in sports, like I'm always telling you, you'll actually hit us in sports today. Sometimes your great defense is your offense. You feel me? So they had to go on the offense. So the Black Liberation Army went on the offense against reactionary pig terrorism from the police departments in America and the government of the United States of America, the empire. So the Black Liberation Army, I'm not really going to get into what the Black Liberation Army was doing because I want you to go do that research yourself, African brothers and sisters. The Black Liberation Army, man, I'd like to say that I'm a descendant of the Black Liberation Army because I was born in that time period. You feel me? I'm a 70s baby. And this is the era of the Black Liberation Army. So I like to say that this movement right here is what really thrusted my mentality and thrusted me into the movement, studying the history of the Black Liberation Army, which is not rarely talked about because the United States government has demonized the Black Liberation Army so much to an extent that it pushes a lot of Black people away that they don't even want to talk about the Black Liberation Army because of what the Black Liberation Army was doing in combating terroristic violence on the movement of the Black Liberation struggle, man. So yeah, the Black Liberation Army from 1970 to 1980, she became a part of this movement. And we like to say that the Black Liberation Army was already in existence since those African ancestors came off the boats because the resistance started on the boats in slavery. Like some of the first Black Liberation Armies was Nat Turner's 1831 Black Liberation Army. The Black Liberation Army has always been around because Black people have always been fighting back and trying to get free from the terroristic violence of the United States of America. The Black Guards or the Revolutionary Action Movement also is a predecessor of the Black Liberation Army and was also a Black Liberation Army. So Assata and these great freedom fighters that became a part of the Black Liberation Army really started to intensify the struggle to free what we know as today in America is the New African Nation, the provisional government of the Republic of New Africa. So Assata Shakur and a lot of these Black Liberation Army members became conscious citizens of the Republic of New Africa. That's something you must understand so you can understand Assata's struggle and her liberation. You feel me? And the struggle of New African people here today is that their whole basis was nationalism. Because the Black Panther Party was really based on communalism, or what they say, intercommunalism. So their struggle to these great brothers and sisters wasn't what they really wanted to continue to fight for. Because I'm not into no bashing, because we got to learn from all our mistakes of the movement, of the Black liberation struggle. It's the fact that Assata and them seen a wider struggle, a bigger struggle, which is nationhood. And before I close this live off, I'm going to read her statement and speech that was given a couple of days after she was liberated out of prison that you need to read. That's on my website, newafrican77wordpress.com. So the whole thing with the Black Liberation Army was, no, we're fighting for nationalism now. We're fighting for nationhood. There's a nation here that's being oppressed, a colony of Africans, Black people in America who want their own. This is something you got to understand about the Black Liberation Army and these organizations that became revolutionary nationalist organizations that you heard Malcolm X, who was a big influence and who was the basis of the Black Liberation Army, was Malcolm L. Hajj Malik Shabazz, who is indeed the ideological father of the provisional government of the Republic of New Africa. This is facts, people. So just to get an understanding of Assata's ideology, I wanted to speak on that part, is that Assata Shakur is a New African revolutionary nationalist. She believes in land, independence, and socialism. Because a lot of people who like to, shout out Assata, who like to use Assata quotes, who like to post Assata on social media and things of that nature, who wear Assata t-shirts. You got movements like the Black Lives Matter, the Daughters of Assata. You got people like this, right? Who that I see are, and I'm not to bash the movement, their movements, because that's their thing. And I don't necessarily co-sign or ride with those movements, but my thing is this: these movements claim that they base their movements off Assata. You feel me? But there's a contradiction there, because movements like Black Lives Matter and the Daughters of Assata, they don't push Assata's ideology. You feel me? And a lot of people don't talk about Assata's ideology. What does she truly struggle for? What does she truly believe in? You feel me? And I think nationalism gets left out the picture too much. You see what I'm saying? So that's why I want a lot of African sisters and Black sisters to start to study nationalism. Please, Black sisters, start to study nationalism. Because this great sister sacrificed herself in the name of New African nationalism. And nationalism, what they used to call back then Black nationalism, meaning that Black people were struggling and fighting for their own self-determination, land, you feel me? And the political power and control of their destiny, and of our people to have the power to govern themselves. See, a lot of this stuff is not being taught by these other so-called civil rights organizations, because I like to call them civil rights organizations, because they're not revolutionary organizations. They're not because they don't push revolutionary science, just to make it simple and plain. You see what I'm saying? Which is a contradiction to, you know, you're always putting on Asada shirts. You're always posting these people, but you don't believe in nothing that they believe in. Not necessarily saying you got to believe in what they believe in. You just need to study what they believe in so you can understand their true, how can I put it? So you can see their true, you know what I'm saying, ambitions on what they're truly struggling for. I think that's one of the biggest mistakes is that a lot of black people, African people don't understand the Black Panther Party's true aspirations and agendas and goals. The Black Liberation Army, the Black Liberation Army's true agendas, ambitions, and goals. The Republic of New Africa's true ambitions, aspirations, and goals gets lost in the sauce, man. Because I really think a lot of African people fear those ideologies. You see what I'm saying? Which you should not fear that, man. Because every black person on this planet should be fighting for black liberation and freedom and you know what I'm saying, struggling to free your people and to get political power for your people. That's something that every movement and every organization should be doing. Like Assata Shakur and the Black Liberation Army. So in closing off of the Black Liberation Army, which leads me to her liberation on November 2nd, 1979, is that the newly formed BLA believed that the character of reformism is a based, unprincipled class collaboration with the enemy and asserted the Black Liberation Army asserted these principles in their ideological doctrine, which is that we are anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist, anti-racist, and the most important of them all, anti-sexist. We are anti-sexist African people because sexism has played a detrimental, contradictory factory in what's keeping New African people back here in North America, man. Because we live in a patriarchal society, man. We live under a patriarchal government that sexist, oppresses women to the highest development. Because once you oppress the women, now you got a big issue and you got a big problem. Trust me. Number two, that we must of necessity strive for the abolishment of these systems and for the institution of socialistic relationships in which black people have total and absolute control over their own destiny as a people. Let me say that one more time. Black Liberation Army, Assata Shakur. Number two, on their principles, that we must of necessity strive for the abolishment of these systems and for the institution of socialistic relationships in which black people have total, absolute control of their own destiny as a people. This is what you're supposed to be fighting for, people. Self-determination of a people is a human right. This is something that you must understand as African people and as an African people in the global community and world. You have the right to self-determination and you have the right to have the control, the complete political, social, economic control over your nations of people. This is the most simplest ideological thing that you should know as a freedom-loving people, as a people who are trying to escape discrimination, racism, capitalism, sexism, is that you need to be combating that with self-determination. Feel me? This is what Assata stands for the people who like to post Assata, but who really don't study Assata. This is something that you need to understand, man. The third and final one is that in order to abolish our systems of oppression, we must utilize the science of class struggle. Develop the science as it relates to our unique national conditions. Let me say that again. Let me say that one more time. Because this is the most logical common sense that you need to understand as New African people. Is this, man. Number three, that in order to abolish these systems of oppression, which is racism, discrimination, capitalism, sexism, is that we must utilize the science of class struggle. We know that it's a class struggle, people. There's a class war going on here in North America, the United States of America, and across the globe. It's a global class struggle as well, because you have a higher class, a ruling class. That's 1% that controls all the wealth and controls the destiny of all oppressed people on the planet. That has to be abolished. It has to be defeated. It has to be eradicated. It has to be destroyed, people. Classism has to be destroyed, because classism is oppressive when it's not structured right and when it's not operating right, because you have tiers of classes where one class is dominating the other class. You feel me? Like New African people, what class do you think you are in the United States of America? For 400 years, you have been second-class citizens. You're still second-class citizens. Why? Because the 13th Amendment still exists. The 14th Amendment still exists, which is a farce amendment in the Constitution. Because, for one, you were never given the choice or the destiny to choose what you wanted to do when you were released out those chains and slavery. They forced you to be Americans. They forced you to be citizens. And the only reason why I'm saying that is because class struggle has to be studied. It's a science to it. Because now you can understand that, okay, now I see what they're doing to me and what they're doing to my people, man. And why these things are going on today, like police terrorism. Police terrorism is a strategy and tool in the war of classisms on oppressed people. This is why police departments murder new African black people the way they do in this country. Because of that 13th Amendment, 14th Amendment, and the 15th Amendment. Please write that down. The 13th Amendment, the 14th Amendment, and the 15th Amendment of the Constitution. Once you study those three amendments in the Constitution, then you will understand why we must fight this class struggle to liberate new African people and African people here in America, man. For self-determination. Self-determination is our number one struggle that we should be fighting in this country. We must fight for political power. We must combat classism. You see what I'm saying? This is something a lot of people don't get, man. They don't understand this shit. Again, I got to say that one more time before I move on, is that in order to abolish the systems of oppression, we must utilize the science of class struggle. Develop this science as it relates to our national conditions. Your conditions, people. You must develop yourself socially, politically, economic to combat the conditions in the material world. Because it's the conditions that creates what you see in New African and African communities daily. Poverty, ignorance, abnormal education. You feel me? Your kids are being taught education that's not beneficial to them being developed and being productive people in America, man. It's a pipeline to prison educational system. You see what I'm saying? The public education system. That's a condition. That's a condition. Why it's a condition? That's a condition because now you have non-educated kids being taught colonialist history who grow up to be criminals, who grow up to be violent because they don't know who they are as a people. You see what I'm saying? Conditions create abnormal behaviors, mentally, physically, spiritually. This is something you got to understand, people. Conditions is what creates what you see in the black community every day in America and across the globe. In Africa, even in Africa, because you can use the science of class struggle in Africa. It's a class struggle in Africa. In Biafra land, it's a class struggle. You feel me? It's always a class struggle. This is what we're fighting for. This is what we're fighting with. You see what I'm saying? It's a class struggle. Because the conditions, we are here, man. Like Asada, we are here to diagnose the conditions. Once you diagnose the conditions, then you come up with ideologies and theories of scientific methods that's effective to liberate your people out of those conditions. This is all that a revolutionary servant is, man. The most important thing of being a revolutionary servant is getting liberating the mind. The mind has to be liberated first. That's the first stage of revolution. It's changing your mind, transforming yourself as a human being to becoming a productive African, a productive new African that's here to be in service of your people, to help liberate your people. This is what Assata stands for. This is what she's the symbol of. Assata is the symbol of servants of the people. She was a servant of the people. She wasn't no cop killer. And I'm going to get to that right now. You see what I'm saying? Because the United States Empire would like to have you believe that Assata is a terrorist. She's not a terrorist. How can you be a terrorist when you're being murdered by the terrorists? You're fighting against the conditions. It goes back against class struggle and the conditions. We're fighting against the conditions that got us living in hell. How is that? How is combating that terrorism? It's impossible. No oppressed people can be a terrorist. It's impossible. You feel me? No oppressed people can be terrorists, man. Unless they're abnormal people who are fighting in the interest of European imperialism, capitalism, and things of that nature. Yeah, you got those type of terrorists. But the true righteous brothers and sisters who are trying to liberate their people, man, you know that we've been fighting against terrorists for 400 years. Your ancestors are victims of terrorists. What you think those people were that brought those Africans over here in America? What were they? They wasn't no freedom-loving people. They were terrorists. They are the real terrorists because they still killing you. The police departments in America are putting in terroristic work on new African people. So how can Assata be a terrorist? She's not a terrorist. They got Auntie Assata at the top of the list of the FBI most wanted list. This is why we must defend her name, defend her struggle, teach about her struggle, so we can make it understood globally. African people must come to the defense of Assata Shakur's legacy to tell the European colonialists and the European terrorists that no, keep your filthy hands off Assata. She's a freedom fighter. She fought against one of the most significant periods of time of warfare and genocide on African people, the 70s and the 80s, people. Because if you study the 70s and the 80s, now you will understand the conditions that you see today in black communities, like the violence, we killing each other, the violence, the drugs, the sexism, the gender wars. You see what I'm saying? All this shit is science, people. It's a science to this shit. You feel me? So how can you be a terrorist when you're fighting against conditions that's unlivable? Somebody please explain this to me. How can you be a terrorist when you're fighting against conditions, ghettos? The majority of new African people in America live in ghettos, man. Projects. Being treated like guinea pigs. Being dissected like guinea pigs. And they walking around like this is the greatest thing that ever happened to them. Their mentalities are colonialized. Projects and ghettos are baby colonies. Black communities are baby colonies because they're not liberated. People, the education is not liberated. The food is not liberated. You see what I'm saying? The conditions ain't liberated. It's not favorable for people to become productive in those type of conditions. They can by going against all odds. We done seen plenty of us battle it. Many of us still battling the conditions. We're still struggling for it. We're still standing up and struggling for it. You see what I'm saying? But no new African or African person can be a terrorist fighting against conditions that creates abnormal conditions and behaviors of people, man. But they will have you to believe that Assata is a terrorist. She's not a terrorist, man. Don't believe none of that nonsense, man. Which brings me up to that. Which brings me up to this whole video of Assata's 40th anniversary of her liberation. Is this, man. Y'all got to understand that leading up after the Black Liberation Army took on those attacks, May 2nd, 1972, 1973, May 2nd, is a course of history that would change Assata's life forever. It's the New Jersey Turnpike Shootout. If you don't know what the New Jersey Turnpike Shootout is, I suggest you to go look it up and research it and study it. Assata, along with Sundiata Acoli, who's still a political prisoner, who's 80-something years old, still in prison, free Sundiata today. If you don't know who Sundiata Acoli is, please go Google it. Please write his name down. Political prisoner of war who should have been freed about 5 or 6 years ago when they were supposed to free him, but they overturned that, and this great freedom fighter is still in prison, old age, man. And this man they were attacked by the racist pigs of the New Jersey State Troopers, man. They attacked these brothers and sisters, along with Zaid Malik, who lost his Zaid Malik Shakur, who lost his life that day, defending Assata and Sundiata. You see what I'm saying? Who lost their life. They're cruising up the New Jersey Turnpike, which is a highway here in the United States of America, in the state of New Jersey. They're cruising up the highway. These racist pigs get behind them, pull them over. And you already know, and this is the thing you got to understand about the 70s. Still was a racist time period. You just coming out the 60s. You see what I'm saying? The 50s and the 60s, some of the most racist times for black people in America. The 70s was no different. So think about the mind state of those police officers, and that mind state still lives today amongst police officers because they still killing black people every day in America. So think about the true mind state of those New Jersey State Troopers then. What they was pulling over on the New Jersey Turnpike were niggers to them. This is something you gotta know. This is something you must understand. They were pulling over 3 niggers that day. They didn't see Assata, Sundiata, and Zaid as humans, as equal people. They seen them as niggers. So you must understand that social dynamic. So you already knew it was going to be bad business when these state troopers pulled Assata and them over that day on May 2nd, 1973. So, they tell Assata and them to get out the car. You know what I'm saying? With their hands up. So they get out the car. Assata got her hands up, which the Black Lives Matter movement would later on add to their struggle. Hands up when the Mike Brown case, when Mike Brown was killed by the white racist police officer in St. Louis. Assata had her hands up. You see what I'm saying? She wasn't resisting like most new African people in America. She wasn't resistant. She had her hands up. So this racist cop decided he wanted to do what all terrorists do. He wanted to kill these 3 niggers. You see what I'm saying? Because that's how he looked at them. They wanted to kill these 3 niggers. That's how they looked at them, man. So this cop pulls out his pistol and opens fire on Assata, Sundiata, and Zaid Malik. If it wasn't for Zaid Malik Shakur, Assata probably would be dead today. This brother sacrificed himself. You feel me? In defense of his sister. Defending the black woman, the African woman. Lost his life. Assata is hit several times in her arm. And the crazy thing, when Assata went to court, they had proof, they had doctors that when Assata got shot, it damaged nerve damage in her fingers, in her hands. This was one of the major evidence in the case that should have got Assata acquitted of the murder of that police officer. Is that every medical scientific research and fact is that when the police officer shot Assata, she couldn't shoot no gun. She didn't have no gun. She couldn't shoot no gun. When they shot her, her nerve damage in her finger was gone. She couldn't even pull a trigger. And this is the most logic, common sense thing of them all. How could Assata shoot the police officers when her hands is in the air? You see how contradictory the empire is and these racist judicial system is? Like they would actually go against common logical sense to make up something just to compensate for friendly fire. Because what happened to those state troopers and the state trooper that got killed is that they got shot by each other, trying to shoot Assad and them. This is how the state trooper died, people. The state trooper got shot by one of his own comrades, trying to kill three African people that day. This is what happened. This is pure facts on what happened that day. Is that they tried to kill Assad. They tried to kill Sundiata. They tried to kill Zaid Malik Shakur, which they did, and long live Zaid Shakur. You see what I'm saying? This brother dived in front of the bullets. He took the bullets from the crossfire of these police officers trying to murder them because they kind of knew who they were. You see what I'm saying? And even if they didn't know who they were, who gives them police the right to harass three brothers and sisters riding up a highway, which they still doing today? They still doing the same thing today. This one thing African brothers and sisters outside the country that come here must understand is that once a black man leaves his house in America or a black sister leaves his house in America, his life or her life is in danger by the people who are supposed to serve and protect them. Man, one of the most scariest and dangerous things that you can experience here in North America is getting pulled over by a police officer. African brothers and sisters that live outside America. The most dangerous thing to a black man, black woman, and child in America is getting caught on a dark street by yourself, getting pulled over by police in America. The same thing that happened to Assad Shakur and them. That is the most dangerous thing. Because you don't know if you're going to leave that scene or that pullover alive. You don't know if you're going home alive in America. When you get pulled over by a white police officer in America, you don't know if you're going home. A lot of black people outside of America don't understand that dynamic because they don't live amongst racist white people. You see what I'm saying? Except for the black people who live in European countries across the globe. But look at new African people in America. We were bought here by terrorist white people. We've been terrified by racist white people for 400 years. And they still pulling us over on back streets, killing our kids, unarmed. And the unarmed brothers and sisters who have no weapons. No weapons. But they get pulled over. We get pulled over at high rates, and we may lose our life. Me, man, when I'm driving in the United States, man, hey, man, I get away from police. You know, I hate to say this. I'm not trying to say that I fear them, but I fear what their racism will do. Because a racist, idiot, lunatic, sociopath this is the one thing you got to understand, because these police departments are soldiers of the white nation. There's a white nation here in America who pushes white nationalism, who pushes white pride, white power. These racist soldiers are soldiers of those nations of racist white people. So when we riding around in America, we have to be on self-defense alert. We have to be on guard, because this could be our last time I'm driving in this car, or this could be the last time on earth. Over 200 to almost 500 new African black people have been murdered in America this year. And I'm just making this connection because now you can see what Assad Shakur case is. The same social dynamic, the same social terroristic dynamic that took place that day on Assad and Sundiata and them and Zaid Malik Shakur. The same dynamic. This is 40 years ago. This is 40 years ago, people. And black people still getting murdered the same way and shot the same way as Assad did 40 years ago. I mean, come on, man. These are human rights violations on a people. This is genocide on a people, man. To be murdered by the units of this government who's supposed to be serving and protecting us. But we know that's not true, because did the slave owners protect us? Did the slave patrols protect us? No. You see what I'm saying? And now throughout history, they still continue to use the mechanism of criminalization to be their lullaby and their past to murder us. It's labeling all African black people in America as criminals. They still criminalizing Assata. Man, Assata, if you go look up her records and you go look up all the charges, man, she went through a struggle in the 70s, man. They put all types of trumped up charges on Assata, man. They had her doing bank robberies. They had her doing, which we call appropriations, because ain't no such thing as a bank robbery, because you ain't never paid our ancestors. So anything we take from the United States of government is ours. That's our reparations. So ain't no such thing as a bank robbery when a new African or a black man is, appropriating funds from the United States empire. What we take is ours, because you owe that shit to our ancestors. So anything we take is ours. So ain't no such thing as a bank robber, but they still trumped up fake fantasy realities that Assata was this big bad Bonnie and Clyde robbery bandit. Man, they had Assata all over the place. Assata, she was involved in every robbery. She was involved in every murder. Go read her criminal allegedly accusations that they got on Auntie Assata, man. Go read it. Man, this shit, this long. Long list of fabricated charges, man. And then a lot of those charges got dismissed. A lot of those charges were dismissed because they were so irate, so outrageous. Like, damn well this sister ain't do all that shit. Allegedly. You feel me? Because I'm not going to take away from her freedom fighting and what she was fighting for. She was a combatant of the Black Liberation Army. So she did put in some work. But some of that shit that they was trying to charge her with was outrageous. There's no way she could have pulled all that off. How can she be in all these places at one time? You feel me? I mean, a disgrace and a pure example of the racist judicial system to trump fake charges up on black people, man, and criminalize us to get us incarcerated. So, okay, leading up to that, because I want to get to the liberation, and I'm going to close out with this speech from Assata, is that she was going back and forth to trial through the 70s. So eventually, a lot of those charges were dismissed. A couple of murder charges were dismissed. They couldn't prove it. Bank robberies, they couldn't prove some of those. Those were dismissed. They kept a couple of those charges, and ultimately, the racist, because you already know how racist the jury was. A racist jury is not good for a black man and an African man and an African woman and a black woman in America. You know what you face every day in this judicial system, and you know what you face when you're going up against a racist ass jury. You're not going to win, man. You're not going to win. Most of the time, you ain't going to win. You might win sometimes, but the higher percentage is you're going to lose that case against a racist jury. And like I said, go back to the social times of the 70s. These were pure white racist people who didn't care what black person they were locking up. Long as that person was being re-enslaved and being re-encaged like an animal, get that black person out of here. Lock his ass up. Lock her ass up for stuff that they didn't even do. You see what I'm saying? So Assata Shakur gets sentenced to life in prison for a crime she did not commit. She was shot with her hands in the air. Gets sentenced to life. She didn't kill the police officer. This is the number one thing that you have to understand. Unless she's a superhero, unless she got special superpowers, there's no way in Sam hell you're going to play with my logical common sense that a black woman with her hands up can shoot a white police officer, man. How can she do it? Where'd the gun come from? The gun just appeared? How is that possible? It makes no sense. And they had the medical records to prove it and debunk it. So she should have been acquitted. Key point, I want all y'all to understand. Assata Shakur should have never went to prison. She didn't commit none of those crimes. They had no evidence that she committed any of those crimes. They had no evidence that she committed the murder of the white police officer. He was killed in friendly fire. So at the end of the day, she got, like every other black person in this goddamn country, faces every day an unjust sentence. And not to mention, let me throw this in here, because I can't leave this out of her story. They beat Assata Shakur repeatedly once they captured her. She was beaten repeatedly by white, racist men, police officers. Face bruised up, beat up to a pulp. Body beat up, bruised up to a pulp. Go Google her pictures of when she got incarcerated. Beat up, police brutality, beat up. Trying to kill her in the hospital. They tried to kill her in the hospital. Then when they lock her up, right? Then when they locked her up, when they first lock her up, they put her in an all-males prison. How dare you put a woman in an all-males prison? Auntie Assata went through one of the most terroristic times being in the male prison. Brutalizing her. She's in a prison with men. And even when she went to the female prison, still getting brutalized. She's in prison for nothing. She didn't commit no crimes. So ultimately, which leads up to what should be commemorated, and I want a lot of y'all to help commemorate across the globe, African people across the globe, is Assata Shakur Liberation Day. November 2nd, 1979, Clinton Correctional in Clinton, New Jersey, women's prison. The courageous Black Liberation Army and anti-imperialist freedom fighters entered the prison and frees Assata Shakur, takes Assata Shakur into their custody. You see what I'm saying? Liberates her. And the key thing that I want y'all to understand about them liberating her is that nobody got hurt. Nobody got killed. Let me say that again. When these courageous Black Liberation Army freedom fighters entered that prison, nobody got hurt. No one got shot. It was a clean escape, a clean liberation. So they can't hold that on them. They didn't kill nobody. They went and freed their sister. So on November 2nd, 1979, the greatest escape in history, the greatest escape in modern times in the United States of America, besides Harriet Tubman escaping slavery, and all the undocumented escapes of sisters and brothers in North America from slavery, was Assata Shakur, November 2nd, 1979, liberated from the hells of North America's prison system for a crime she did not commit. Something that has to be commemorated and honored and taught to our kids and our babies, Africans and brothers and sisters across the world. Assata Shakur liberated 40 years this year, Saturday. So wherever you are across the world, please spread her name, uplift her name, as she escaped prison 40 years ago and still is free and under the protection of our ancestors, who keeps her free. And a big salutation, and we got to give salutations to Fidel Castro and the Cuban government for protecting our sister and keeping our sister safe in Cuba and keeping her free in Cuba. Long live Fidel Castro. Shout out to Fidel Castro and Che Guevara. And the Castro brothers, who have kept Assata under their protection. And we pray to our ancestors that she remains free until her last days on this planet, and she transitioned, that she would transition free. Even though ultimately we want Assata pardoned. Assata needs to be pardoned, because all those trumped up charges and them crimes she did not commit, she should be pardoned, and she should be able to come back home to her daughter. She should be able to come back to the United States of America. Assata should be pardoned now. It's been 40 years, and you know that she didn't commit these crimes. But now she has been gone so long that it's like, okay, it might not even really be a need for her to come back now, because she's free where she's at now. She's protected where she's at now. And even if Assata can see this message, I want to say that I love you. And African people love you. New African people love you. We will never let your name be tarnished. We will never let your name be criminalized. We will never let your name come off a racist ass snake mouth in a bad way, sister. Because for what you did and your sacrifice for African people, your struggles, your pains. You see what I'm saying? You taking those shots for new African people. You taking them shots in the arm. It's honorable. It's honorable to the ancestry of African people globally. You are a courageous symbol for Africa because you still teach that today, Assata. Africa must be free. You took those shots for Africa too. And we salute you, we commemorate you. And you took those shots for the new African independence movement, the new African nation. You took that for us. So we must honor you and commemorate you and always hold your name up in positive, productive light. We're not going to let the racist empire of the United States of America dehumanize our sister. We're not going to let them brutalize our sister verbally. We're not going to keep letting you put these bad, negative energies on our sister when you know this sister ain't commit none of that. She ain't do none of that. We love you, Assata. Simple as that. We love you. And we honor your 40 years of being liberated from the hells of the Empire of America in the prison system. Now, let me read this for you before I get off this live. And you can go to my website, newafrican77wordpress.com, and just put in the search Black Solidarity Day, which is coming up also, November 5th, 1979. We charge genocide, Assata Shakur's official statement, one of the most historic piece of documents that every new African brother, sister in America should have. You should, matter of fact, you should print it out and put it on your wall. Teach this to your children, your daughters, especially your daughters, and teach this to our women. Our women need to hear this statement. Our women needs to learn about Assata. They need to spread Assata names. She's an example for our sisters. And she put this statement out because in 1979, 1980, a whole lot of organizations, black organizations, got together and came together. And even white anti-imperialist organizations got together and they formulated or organized this march on DC. Not the march on DC of MLK or any of that reformism shit. No, this was a revolutionary march to charge in the name of El-Haj Malik Shabazz, to charge the United States of America for genocide and human rights violations against the 45 million new African people in America in 1979. Black Solidarity Day was formed off of that march. They went to the United Nations to charge the United States of America for genocide and human rights violation against our people, man. Several movements. Matter of fact, let me read it all. And this is November 5th. If y'all, and you need to teach this to your babies too, about Black Solidarity Day. This is something that a lot of new African people don't know about also, is Black Solidarity Day, which is November 5th annually. 3 days after Assata Shakur Day is Black Solidarity Day, excuse me. Statement from Assata, November 1979, Black Solidarity Day. 3 days after Assata Shakur was liberated from prison, the National Black Human Rights, NBHRC, predecessor to the Malcolm X grassroots movement, organized over 5,000 new Africans, black people, to the United Nations to charge the USA with genocide against our people inside the United States. It was there that the Black Liberation Army announced that Assata had been liberated in solidarity with and support of the NBHRC mass mobilization, a historic example of the people who organized to free the land. Let me read that last part one more time. The Black Liberation Army announced that Assata had been liberated in solidarity with and in support of the NBHRC mass mobilization, a historic example of the people who organized to free the land. This is Assata's statement. Listen closely to what she said on this historic date after her liberation from prison. dedicated to the greatest freedom fighter of our people, El-Hajj Malik Shabazz. Uhuru sisters and brothers, revolutionary greetings. These are Assata's own words. November 1979, crosses burned the face of America. November 1979, and hundreds of Ku Klux Klan marched all over the country carrying clubs and chains and machine guns. 1979, and black families are firebombed. Over 40% of black youth are unemployed. 1979, and white policeman shoots a handcuffed black man in the head and is acquitted. 1979, 5 policemen shoot a Puerto Rican man armed only with a pair of scissors 24 times in 1979. And in Philadelphia, the 4th largest city in the country, is sued by the Justice Department for systematically condoning and encouraging worldwide police brutality, especially against blacks and Puerto Ricans. We are on the thresholds of the 1980s, entering into a new decade, and we have got to look and see what America has in store for us. This country is on the decline. The sun is setting on the American empire because of liberation movements around the world. The softness of cheap labor and stolen raw materials are rapidly drying up. America is a vampire experiencing a blood shortage for the first time in history. The national trade deficit is about $30 billion a year. The Joint Economics Committee of Congress announced in August that the standard of living of the average American would be drastically reduced in the 1980s. Blacks and Hispanics, their report said, would be hit the hardest. Now what, I ask you, is what Assata says, can be harder than drastic. Unemployment, according to the report, will remain at 7% higher. The committee came to the conclusion the labor force had to be dramatically reduced in order to minimize the problem. Assata says, what does this mean? Reduce the labor force dramatically. What does that mean in a country that has a history of using racism to perpetuate capitalism and oppression? Who is going to be the scapegoat? In a country that's historically used blacks, Hispanics, Orientals, and Native Americans as scapegoats. What do black people and third world people have to look forward to in the 80s? What does all this have to do with political prisoners and the prison movement? Every black leader in this country with potential of being a black messiah has gone to prison. Even black leaders without the potential of being the black messiah has gone to prison. Marcus Garvey, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and countless others who spoke out for human rights went to prison. What does this tell us? Out of 400,000 people in the United States prison, 300,000 are black. 275,000 prison cells are being built or are in the planning stages in every state in this country trying to implement or reinstate the death penalty. What does this mean? Assata says, I've been to prison 6.5 years and I can feel what's coming in the air. Prisons are becoming brutal and repressive. Behavior modification programs are booming. People are receiving longer sentences with fewer chances of being paroled. 13-year-old children are being sentenced to life in prison. The government has stepped up its musical jail policy by shipping prisoners all over the country away from their lawyers, from their families, and from their community. Sundiata Okolie has been transferred 3 times in the last 2 months. He's been transferred. First, they transferred him from Trenton State Prison in New Jersey, and from Trenton, he went to Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. And from Lewisburg, he went to Leavenworth, Kansas. And from Leavenworth, he was shipped to Marion, Illinois. And all of this is under the Interstate Compact Agreement. This is stuff y'all need to research too. Now Sundiata has has never been convicted of a federal crime, but Lewisburg and Leavenworth and Marion are federal prisons. Under the Interstate Compact Agreement, it is possible for any prisoner to be transferred anywhere in the United States, and that prisoner has no say-so in the matter. His lawyer doesn't have any say-so in the matter. His family doesn't have any say-so in the matter. See, look how Assad is putting other people before her. Something that y'all need to understand. Assad states, but what will happen as more and more prisoners are transformed from prison to prison to prison? Soon their families won't be able to keep in contact with them. That's going on today, people. They won't know where they are. They will make them easier to kill and brutalize. Under the same Interstate Compact Agreement, I was shipped to Maximum Security Unit in Alderson, West Virginia. And I stayed there until the unit was closed and I was shipped back to Clinton Institution for Women. Here at Clinton, 2 women have died in the last 2 months under suspicious circumstances. The prisons of America rapidly becoming replicas of Nazi or South African concentration camps. And with the reinstitution of death penalties, prisons will shortly become extermination camps. I know I'm not painting a pretty picture, but this is not a pretty world, and we can make it pretty by sticking in our head and in the sand. America has been committing genocide against poor black and third world people for hundreds of years, and in recent years, racism and repression in this country has been accelerated, and if we don't wake up to what's going on, we might find ourselves victims to a second Holocaust. This is the last most important part of Assata's statement on Black Solidarity Day. The main part that I wanted to read to y'all before I get off. This is what Assata stated. She says, we already know what we're fighting against. Now we've got to determine and decide amongst ourselves what we are fighting for. How can 25 or 30 million black people in America win our liberation? How can we win? Marcus Garvey, he had a dream, and his dream was to go back to Africa. Martin Luther King had his dream, and his dream was to integrate into American society. And I don't think that dream was a reality. American society has told us time and time again, they don't want us. And now looking at American society, looking at its capitalist, racist system, I don't want to integrate into America. America is a dying country. Anyway, Malcolm X had his dream. And his dream was land, nationhood. And his dream has become my dream. When I would hear the words nationhood, this is what Assata is saying. When I would hear the words nationhood and land, I would listen to Malcolm's speeches before. I'd say, yeah, to myself, but where? And then he would talk about 5 states down south. But that didn't seem real, as I would say also. Well, shoot, we gonna move down there and they'll drop a bomb on us. But they're dropping bombs and killing us right now. And there's another side to that. Once people start struggling for land and struggling for sovereignty, start struggling for nationhood, then the whole world will become a part of that fight and take up and say, look, what you're doing, you're killing those people and you're making genocide. Those people want a homeland. America doesn't have any wine internationally talking about we don't have the right to have our own homeland. They have oppressed us for 400 years, is what Assata says. They haven't let us live in America. They haven't let us be citizens. They haven't let us have justice, equality. We can prove it. So if they don't want to let us to be free as Americans, then we'll be free as New Africans. And I'm going to close right there. You can read this whole speech on my website, newafrican77wordpress.com. Black Solidarity Day, Assata Shakur's speech, November 5th, 1979. On that note, I hope I broke everything down to the clearest possibility that I could. I hope y'all learned a little bit more about Assata Shakur's struggle, plight, and legacy. Let's keep her name in the gracious light of positivity, and let's celebrate and commemorate Assata this Saturday, November 2nd. the 40th anniversary of the liberation of Assata Shakur, brought to you by the New African Independence Movement and the anti-imperialist comrades. On that note, signing out. Haki Kweli Shakur, free the land by any means necessary. Shout out to everybody who tuned into this live. Let's uplift our sisters that's pushing nationalism, our sisters that's pushing nationhood, our sisters that's pushing freedom fighting. Let's uplift these sisters, man. And before I get off here, let's continue to uplift all freedom fighters that's still in prison from the Black Liberation Army. We still have Black Liberation Army political prisoners of war and political prisoners behind the walls, man. Let's continue to struggle to try to free our elders and freedom fighters of the Black Liberation Army, man. Signing out on that note, man. It's the season of struggle. The season of struggle is 365. It's a marathon. The struggle continues, man. Free the land. One love. NY Chinike.